We'd like to welcome everyone today to our Bountiful City Council work session. And we are really excited to be talking about public art today. And so we're happy to have Becca. Will you please help me? How do I pronounce your last name?
Montalegre.
Montalegre.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So nice to have you here, and we'll turn the time over to her for our discussion.
Thank you. No worries about the pronunciation, too. It's a big one. But it's fun being back here. I feel like it's been a long time since I've been in this room, and it's with my favorite topic, lots of art things. So this will be fun. So just a quick review so we can get to the fun things of voting, the big three locations, then the Bs, and then potentially picking some sculptures today. My goal would be locations first. That's my bigger priority today, at any number that we decide, but for sure up to 3 is what I was hoping for. And the reason I did 2 to 3 is because knowing our time commitment, and that also helps us be able to get sculptures in sooner. If we have just a few sculptures to start with, we get them in, and then we can do this whole process again a little later in the year is what I would hope for. So once we have locations down, we know how many sculptures we can fill in, and that doesn't necessarily have to be today. So with locations, the ones that we came up with, myself and with the Public Art Advisory Board members, we were focusing on choosing locations that were either in our downtown historic Main Street, as that has been our goal, to have that start as being a little saturated so we can have a sculpture walk. It was a really successful sculpture walk this last summer that the advisory board held. I think some of you were able to attend. I was not. I was busy with a month baby at the time. But it was really successful that they had a map and could walk along Main Street. We also chose a few other locations that could expand slightly from that, that's still somewhat walkable and highly trafficked or with people that go by. So parks is what we picked. So we've got Bountiful Town Square, where we just have Dad right now. I think that would be a great spot for an additional location on a pedestal, so a smaller piece. What I didn't add is I also think there could be 2. I went by again just this week and thought we could have 2, since that is a very highly visited artsy kind of location. The second one would be just replacing the one that we have right now. Wet Your Whistle is going to be leaving probably within this month. We could replace that with another sculpture right outside of Creative Academy. There's a spot we could do outside of the post office, just off of the sidewalk. It's just cement right now, that we would put a pedestal of metal. And then Washington Park is one that came up a few times with the advisory board that they loved because it's a new park. It could bring in more community, as we have one member who's from that location and thought how great it would be to bring something in from that Washington Park community right there. Or even something that could involve with the skate park. We just thought that was a great spot. And then the last 2 was near the 400 North sign. So you know where that Bountiful planted sign is? That's on 4th North. There's those pipes right behind it. There is an idea of having a sculpture there, since there's already some interaction with children at those pipes, if we had a somewhat interactive sculpture in that location. And then the dream is still dream of the advisory board is they would love a piece of art at 5 Points. But that would be big, and that's just, it made it to the list. But that eventually, a piece in the middle of 5 Points is those locations. So I don't know if there was any discussion that was needed, but I thought we could do either a vote just to see how many we had.
I'm wondering, when you say 5 Points, we're talking about the roundabout?
The roundabout
And was there any
center.
discussion with the board about, because I know we've talked about before how it's fun to have it be an accessible location where people maybe like photo op, but then, if it being in the middle of a roundabout, then is that a concern, or is that anything that the board talked about?
We did talk about it because from previous years we thought people would want to come up close to it. We also had a concern of, in the past, there have been accidents that have gone up and over that area. But we thought with the right piece, which might not be right now with this list, but with the right piece, it would be large enough that you don't feel like you need to get close. I've seen people with Dad just kind of walk by. They don't need to get necessarily up and close to it. It's more fun, but you don't need to if it's a huge piece. And the second thought is, if it's a big enough piece or had a cement bottom, that would protect it from the fear that has been brought up by accidents rolling over it, that has happened before, and it's been brought up, that we think a big enough piece would stop from that. So that was discussed. Yeah. the thoughts.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Mayor? Washington Park, is there a part of the park that the advisory committee was talking about?
Yeah, I think what the dream would be is either somewhat near the skate park, is finding a big pedestal that could be something that's fun. I'll say if we liked that location, but maybe not one of these sculptures for it, there are artists that have really cool interactive pieces that we could look into doing next if we like the idea of a piece being at that park, if that's a top favorite today. I think interacting with the skate park area is big enough for a large piece that could be fun.
Well, I love that idea, but are we at the point of discussing?
I wonder what the council thinks. I mean, obviously, we're here to discuss it today, whatever the council thinks. I think I like the idea of really having Town Square and Main Street be a little more, maybe even kind of known for that, known for if we walk along, there will be interesting things to see. And so I like the idea of having the locations that have been identified on Main Street. I love things like I've seen in other cities where there's maybe like a bench that people sit down and it's next to Abraham Lincoln and you're taking a picture or something where to me it just kind of adds to the vibrancy of the whole experience of walking downtown. And so I like the idea of having art sprinkled along where there's walkability.
Yeah.
So that's just what comes to my mind. So are we now at the point where we're just talking about our ideas of where we would like, that's kind of the first step that you're asking for?
Just a little bit so that we can get
Yeah.
to a vote, just because there's the next ones.
Sure.
If there's any questions, so just to add to that, I personally also think that's a great idea still, is to focus on our walkable area with our tour, knowing that we still dream of having those extended locations. I brought this up just in case it was a love of all of City Council, because the advisory board loved the idea too. But that would have been a surprise to me, because I know what has been expressed to me is to stay walkable, and I think that's great. But Washington Park and Fourth North and Five Points, those are ones that I think maybe one today, but they're ones I hope to do for sure within our future if it wasn't today. I would just say my recommendation would love to see our Main Street and Town Square just have a few more to start with, and potentially more.
That's where I'm at.
Expanded.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not overly fond of Washington Park
Okay.
myself. I'm fond of the park.
Okay.
Not putting a sculpture at Washington Park. Good clarification, thank you. Unless the unless part might be if it's particularly like sports related, like lacrosse or that midfield soccer one that we saw in the packet. Something if it was applicable like that, I could get on board if my colleagues felt strongly about it, but I'd like to focus on Main Street and the town square. Maybe
that's great.
first east or first west.
Okay.
But could I,
Go ahead.
you go ahead, Rebecca.
Just to add to that as far as other locations, Washington Park future, another vision that's been brought up is that, that we're hoping to do a mural at that park later in the year. But that wall is huge. It could be interesting if there was some sort of wall installation, as we've seen. I know that's hard to picture without seeing art, but there are art that can be installed next to a wall or that is interactive. That is something we potentially could commission from artists now that we have a bigger network of artists. So just going to plug that in your ear to think about as you're at Washington Park. Not something for today because I don't have more info, but those are some visions that could be coming up in the future for Washington Park as far as what you've mentioned.
My only thought with Washington is I think the relationship that we have with the patrons that visit there a lot that are still practicing different types of destruction on the park. If we see how their behaviors or whoever's doing that, of damaging the park, if at that point in time in the future, we see that everything's kind of subsided and we're not going to have vandalism, then I think it would be worth maybe looking at art at that point. But to put art there now with people practicing different things of independence could destroy artwork.
I just want to say, I'm not sure that we know that it's the patrons of the park who are vandalizing it, since the recent vandalization has been so widespread throughout the city. Unfortunately, the graffiti, I assume you're
Yeah, it's-
referencing.
that park's hit
I mean,
twice.
unfortunately, that's been throughout the whole city, unfortunately. But I agree that the primary focus should be on kind of the area of walkability. I agree with what everyone, what the mayor and Matt and Jesse have said about downtown, although I am gonna throw in for the future. I do like the idea of Washington Park, because I've been down there so much in the last 3 weeks, and there are literally hundreds of people there, and watching games, skating, pickling, doing everything that we envisioned at that park. It is so remarkable, and I love the idea of something in the future, when we have, after we feel like we've saturated to the appropriate amount on Main Street area, kind of extending that, especially with that proposed mural.
Yeah.
That would be my second vote off of Main Street. I have a question, though, about, and I do like the idea of Bountiful Town Square as well. But that's just an extension of Main Street. But with the post office, I'm curious, where on the post office property would it be, on
Closer to the street where it's actually
the
city
big
property.
planter?
No, what I was picturing is there's some flat cement, just knowing of sculptures I've seen that are more tall. In between like a street post or a bench, there's some that are just plain cement right next to the curb. So street, curb, plain cement, then the sidewalk. There's a few of those plain spots that could be a good spot for a pedestal of art. Did that clarify?
Did you have a comment?
My only last comment I'd
That's the
say,
word,
just for
thank you.
future state, is I do like the 5 Points area. Putting something there in the roundabout that coincides a little bit more with the development that we'll see going into the Renaissance area. So as more office or multi-use things are built there, then that opens up opportunity to also put artwork down there as well. So you extend Main Street downtown Bountiful, but then as it goes that way, that Fifth South could also be another draw that then leads into the new developments that go in there as well.
Sounds like what I'm hearing is that the council is primarily fine to focus on walkable Main Street, Town Square, and then in the future, consider Washington Park, the Renaissance Roundabout. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I definitely agree on the focus on Main Street and downtown, especially would love to see when we can expand our planter boxes all the way to 4th North and 5th South, that we should continue to focus on spreading the art all the way on that corridor before we go to other locations. Supportive of mural and perhaps an installation on the wall at Washington, but I would personally really resist any freestanding sculptures in the park proper at Washington. I think it would just detract from the field space we have set up for lacrosse, and then the skate park, the play area, and the pickleball to kind of squeeze something in on that side, where we're trying to focus on keeping the field space very open for those field sports. I'm maybe in the minority here, but I'm actually not excited about putting something at the roundabout. I've thought about that one a lot, because I really initially had thought that would be an awesome place for Dad, but after thinking about it every time I go around the roundabout and thinking about the whale that Salt Lake City has at 9th and 11th, I do think sometimes it's really a distraction at those roundabouts, and where we've got an important elementary school crossing there, and we have kind of the added traffic that sometimes develops around Thirst? Is that the name of that?
Yes.
I would not complicate the 5 Points roundabout.
Okay,
Could I ask an additional question? I know we're going to get talking about bees and different sculptures, but because it is bullet point number 2, the previous location of Wet Your Whistle, outside Creative Arts Academy, I don't think that is the best location myself. I think it's a little bit covered, it's a little hard to see, and I would prefer, especially if we're gonna add bees that we know will be on Main Street somewhere, I think I would prefer doing, even as you suggested, one, well, at the post office, or even 2 at the town square, or further afield, even further down toward, I know it's not identified here, but somewhere closer to 4th North even, on the Main Street area, just where it's a little more visible. Like, it's so great when you can see, like, is it called, it's not Dad, it's the little boy in the,
Sharing a story, I think.
sharing a story,
bench.
so visible, the flower, so visible. So I love it when they're just a little more accessible when you're going by. Anyway,
I'll just add, the reason I agree, it's actually feedback I'd heard from a few others in the advisory board and others, as far as driving by the trees there for that sculpture, because it was large. It could have had a bigger presence, but it was a little bit hidden in that spot, because I think we just didn't take that into account. I would say it still could be a good spot if there was a piece that was much smaller that needed a pedestal to sit on for walkability, that it would still be more visible higher on a planter like that. But for a size like Wet Your Whistle or Sharing Your Story, that's not a great spot, I agree. Unless there's anything specific, I'm thinking I can go forward from hearing your,
Did you have a comment?
oh, did I miss someone? Oh, sorry, Gary.
No, that's okay. If I may, relative to Washington Park, this week, we will be meeting with some residents who want to put in a memorial bench at Washington Park near the skate park. Originally, their vision was to just purchase a bench and have a plaque, but it sounds more like what they want to do is work with a local artist to create a top to the bench that's decorative, that's made out of skateboard decks and in acrylic. It's definitely more artistic. We're going to get the specs on that when we meet Thursday. I've kind of let them know that because this is a public art installation, that it's something that the council would need to be comfortable with, so we hope to get some sketches. But if you're opposed to that kind of art even at the skate park, it would be good to know that now before we meet with them Thursday.
My reservations were not about bench-type sitting art. They're more about sculptures and those types of things cluttering that space. I think there's a way to do a memorial bench that would allow places for people to sit, rest from skating, or watch kids, playing at the playground and skating.
One consideration, if I might, I love the idea of a bench. It's going to get the edge ground off of it if it's posted somewhere in the line of traffic, or a line of traffic. So I don't know where it should go, but
a
it will
good
need to
point.
be protected.
Yeah, or need to have studs on
grinding
the
edge.
edge so that it can't be skated on. So
Yeah.
we'll bring that up with them when we
Cool.
talk. That's a good
I
point.
love the idea.
Okay.
Great.
Oh, not me.
Okay, so it sounds like there
My
are
all
definitely
days
more
are over.
ideas for even locations within Main Street, that if we, later in the year, have more sculpture, things that come in down the line, there's even more spots within Main Street. But for now, to stick with our goal, I'm gonna go forward with Town Square, at least one. Sounds like one outside the post office was one that was considered. And then potentially the Wet Your Whistle, depending on the sculpture, or a second in Town Square. Does that sound like the right direction that we agree
Yes.
on? Okay, great.
Propose a bee. I think we need a bee sitting on a cantaloupe.
You want to tell us about that?
The history
Because
of
Bountiful used to have
cantaloupes.
cantaloupe days.
Yeah, right,
Used to be
yeah,
cantaloupe
cantaloupe
days.
days,
And
yeah.
so we're throwing in bees that visit Bountiful, but Cantaloupe Days, that links you to history
To
of
the
Bountiful.
history, I like that. Yeah, it's good.
And the cantaloupe was sometimes served with a scoop of vanilla ice cream in the middle of it. You could kill two bees with one stone. Ice cream and cantaloupe.
Let's put it on the list.
As
Great
you're thinking
suggestions on
about,
bees.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
As you're thinking about locations, I just think that, I don't know, I mean, it's one thing to just throw this out about locations, but it's another thing when you're actually walking down Main Street to really identify good spots. But I just think it would be cool if when people are walking along, it's something that they can sense a pattern. It's not like, oh, there's this one sculpture, but it's like, oh yeah, there was one over there, and now we've walked over here, and there's one here. So it would be cool, I think, if we had a little bit of a, I mean, I know that it would take time, and I don't know if the council agrees, but I think it would be nice if Main Street could kind of become known for that, like, oh, it's a really artistic, walkable, fun place to walk around because of these placements. And I think some of that is having enough, is not like going so far without one, like you go a distance and you are bound to come across something. And so maybe that's not realistic right now, but I think eventually it'd be cool if that was the idea.
The post office and Wet Your Whistle could potentially be somewhat extension of that, and we can do more later. I like the idea of a pattern too, especially with our planter boxes. I think that was a success, depending on the size of each sculpture because of the trees, but
Yeah.
I do love that.
Mayor, I think it's really vital for us to focus, to not dilute the product by branching out yet, because of the fact that if we really want to attract artists who will display their pieces with us for sale in the future, we need to have a kind of a heartland of sculpture that is identified as such. And I think focusing on Main Street downtown would be the thing to do.
So a concentration is what you think, agree?
Like you said,
Okay.
that is known for that.
It's what many cities have started with that are known for their art as well. You've got Park City, St. George, even Sugar House. You start with a certain area of art, and then the whole city might have some. But the idea of a walkable sculpture tour is becoming more and more popular, I think, too. So I think it's a great way for us to continue growing,
Great.
which is great.
Any other comments from the council talking about just placement in general?
Okay.
I
Thank
just
you.
want to Councilmember Bradshaw's point. I recently had some visitors in town, and we drove around the well 37 times.
I'm sure if your foot wasn't under recovery, you would have done the whale marathon that I have seen people
We
doing.
were considering doing it via car, but stopped.
Did you have a comment, Councilman Bell?
I just want to say thank you for your effort and the
Amen.
Art Council in that. I think there's some nice pieces here. I particularly like the ones that are more interactive and show motion.
Yeah.
That's just my personal preference and what lends itself to my emotions.
I love that.
So is the next question about bees?
Let's just get a quick vote on B, since you've seen that list. You already have the info on what Mike has said about doing more commissions. The top 5 on the list are the ones the advisory board loved, but honestly, I think all those ideas were great, but the top 5 were easily the majority vote for the advisory board. This doesn't have to be the end of them. My recommendation is that we have a maximum, if we're going to stay on Main Street, a maximum of 12 at this point. Just if there was an oversaturation, I think they would lose their specialty at this point. So if we do 2 to 3, that puts us at 9 or 10. We still have the option of doing 2 more later if we want. But doing 2 to 3 for Mike is also easier timetable for him to complete them.
I like the idea of doing 2 to 3, and I really like your idea, Matt, of a cantaloupe, and the number 1 choice was a farmer's market bee, so maybe we could have a bee with a wheelbarrow with
Of cantaloupes.
cantaloupes.
Double dose.
Okay.
I
Now,
like that.
one thing
3
that
or 4 bees, that's what I said.
that I was hoping we could move up the painting bee, because we do have a number of arts organizations on Main Street. especially down where the BDAC is and, Ramble Gallery, and it's a hosted former galleries. So my vote is move that up into the top.
Sure. I'll say the way our
And 6.
advisory board has done it is everybody looks at all the art and then we'll go down this list and just see how many say it's in their top 3. So if you pick your top 3 right now, we'll probably get a clear view of majority of the top 3 to 4 Bs. How do we feel about that?
So I was going to advocate for more Bs than 3.
I'm in favor of that as well.
In part because some of the art pieces that have already been sold, some of the sculptures, so I was more a fan of actually going with more than 3 Bs
Okay.
at this point.
Does 5 seem like what does the rest of the council think?
If
I
that
was
5 can
estimating that
include-
6 Bs was 13,200 roughly
I like that.
of our budget that is potential, since some of these bigger art pieces aren't.
And I like what Rebecca said about that there's kind of a good sweet spot for how many total we want. And so then maybe that kind of finishes our collection. And so if we think about what we already have and then what we would want in addition to that and how we would kind of finish the collection, if we would want to, to determine what kinds of things we would want to have sort of a variety, right? What does the council think about the number?
I think it's unknowable whether 5 or 6 will round out our collection or whether we're going to want 100.
Okay.
Oh, Bs?
I don't mean to be
So-
contrary, which I never am,
Right. But as of today,
but I would like to also move the painting bee that Councilmember Price Hewish recommended up into the bees to be produced.
and how many would the council think would be a good number for today to give some direction? I mean, would you think? So I have 5 here.
7. To be contrary.
The only thing I'll plug in is even if we
How many-
do 6,
is it the
I
same
wouldn't
person that's doing
commission
the
all
same-
6 from
How-
Mike
how long
at the
does it take him to
beginning.
do?
Oh, okay.
Sorry, what was your
How
question?
long, it's the same person doing the bees, and how long does it take him to do one bee?
Okay, so let's go back to Rebecca about that question.
So even if we could choose that we want 6 Bs eventually, and even choose the topics, but it takes him a little time, it wouldn't be as much time as last time, which took us, I want to say even 6 months before we really got solid renderings. And that's a combination of his own time, because he's a teacher full-time, and also we were still figuring out style. And we went back and forth for a couple months on that, so that part would be quicker. But because he's doing this on the side, he's an art teacher, I think it's Woods Cross, or was it Viewmont now?
I
Can't
think it's
remember.
Farmington.
Farmington.
Oh, it's not even either ones. So Farmington, but I would want to commission 2 to 3, so we could hopefully get them by summertime. And then we could commission another 3. So if we decide all 6 today, great, but I don't think we have to. If we just decided the first 3 and hope for the next 3 next time, that just gives him a better timetable with his
Sounds good.
capacity.
You guys, does the council feel good about picking 3 for some direction today?
I feel better honestly about picking 6, and then we
And he can
have,
choose
And
what
then
he
just
wants
wait.
to do.
yeah, he can choose 3, and we can then have 3 ready to go for someone else that we might do in an RFP for an additional artist, or he could let us know what he thinks is a reasonable timeline to do the others. And while I have the mic, I was going to note that we do have a gardening bee, and that is very similar to a farmer's market bee. Maybe if it is something very specific to cantaloupe, but to me, the wheelbarrow of produce and the gardening bee that already exists would be very
Pretty
similar.
similar. That makes sense. Yeah, okay.
So if we decide 6, let's choose 6 today. I'd say just do a quick review yourself for your top 6, I guess. Yeah, 6 now. And hopefully we can figure out what the top 6 for the majority is today.
Okay.
And I'll just go through the whole list. Yeah, if that works, that's how I do the advisory board. It's how we kind of go quickly. I'll just go through the whole list. So if you can mark your favorites, top 6, we'll find a majority.
I'm comfortable with the 5 indicated there,
Okay?
and I'll add the chalk art, number 13. Make it 6 for me.
You can't vote for 6, Councilman.
Wait, are we going like down?
I'm going to go down the list, the whole list. So I've got Jesse's already down.
Can
He's
you-
got a vote for the first 5, and
Can
then
you
also
remind
chalk.
me, what are the ones that we already have? Bees eating ice cream.
Oh, do you have your list out? I realized that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
we
right
have it.
So
under number
farmer's
2.
market's 1, classic car, rotary themed, ice skating, snow plowing or shoveling.
No, I think the mayor is asking what we already have.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
I see
misunderstood
it.
the question.
Thank you. Yep, got it. Okay, good.
Does the gardening bee have a wheelbarrow?
I don't think so. She is kneeling down with gardening tools and hat and an apron. But I'm,
Which they're saying that one might be.
Mayor, I'd move to use the pronoun be for referring to the bees, so we don't have to use he, she.
thank you.
Bee is kneeling down.
Bee kneeling down, this bee.
Keep us from being confused. Do you want to go through the list and we can each raise our hand on which,
Yes.
so that then you can just
If only there
tell?
was ranked choice voting for this.
Or what about approval voting?
Oh, yeah,
Does
yeah,
anyone want to do it by
approval voting.
approval
That'd be
voting?
fast.
Let's just
Okay.
vote for all of them.
Okay.
We're ready, Rebecca.
Okay, farmer's market bee. 1, 2, 3, okay. Classic car rotary bee. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, easy. All right, ice skating bee. Snow plowing or shoveling bee. 1, 2, 3. Skateboarding. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That looked like all of you. Could you do that one more time? Did I miss one? Didn't.
fine.
Okay, no, I'm just making sure I didn't count wrong.
We
Okay,
don't remember.
I'm taking note too.
thank you. Dancing, tumbling bee.
Oh,
Tumblebee play. I forgot to give credit. Tumblebee, we got one. Okay. Educator or teacher bee.
painting bee.
Mountain biking bee. Cantaloupe bee. I just wrote that, but I guess that's the farmer's market one. Okay, helping or a crossing guard bee of some sort. Skiing bee. Running. Hand cart days bee. Chalk art drawing.
Can I have a question before you
Sure.
make us pronounce this? Can we combine maybe chalk art and painting into one and just ask him to make like an art bee?
He'll either be painting or drawing. Have chalk on his pocket.
Maybe painting on the sidewalk.
All right, just saying.
I could bring that up, let him, because he has a little creative freedom.
Yeah, that could be a good idea.
A painting bee. 1, 2, 3. Okay. I will let him consider that. Okay. Nurse or doctor bee, and golfing. Okay, I think we found our top, so that's great. I'm going to go
Report
forward
back
with
to us
6.
on those.
Yeah.
Do you have the results right now?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think I have an obvious 6. Classic car rotary bee, ice skating bee, snow plowing or shoveling, skateboarding, mountain biking, and painting or chalk art,
Awesome.
sort of combined.
Great list to
I'll
have us
see.
choose from, by the way.
Perfect. Oh,
That was
great.
awesome.
I loved it.
Good
Okay,
options.
we've got our 6. I'll talk to Mike, and we'll start with the first 2 or 3 that he chooses.
You are very patient with us. Thank you.
It's a too fun of a topic to keep short, right? Okay, for the sculptures, let me just use this as a caveat before we vote, because I don't want you to feel limited with this list. This is a list that artists have already been returned these art. I'll be working with them directly. There's more art both in St. George, and I now have a bigger network of artists to work with directly. So I was hoping that today would just be an obvious few favorites to start with. My recommendation is to lease because there's only pros in my mind as far as affordability. Permanence actually isn't necessarily good because we can return it if there's any love-hate with art. It's a really easy discord to have with our community, or discussion, excuse me. And so anyways, all pros to me to be able to stay within our budget, and we can allow more sculpture art later in the year if we lease. So with that being said, I'm just hoping to make a quick review and see if there's an obvious vote, just for time's sake, for our first maybe 2 or 3 to have. Unless there's any specific questions about the art from this list, or if you happen to look online for the new the new, I emailed some over the weekend, the new show. If there's any that you loved or had questions about, I'll answer that, but
Rebecca, for
Yeah.
future reference,
yeah.
I may not even be around on a future deal, but if you could include the dimensions with the name and the artist.
Oh, with
along
the image,
picture,
because it's in the
so that
title of their
Hit
list.
carpal tunnel, flipping the pages
Gotcha.
back and forth.
Okay, sure.
That would be great. And I'll be honest, I don't have any obvious choices out of this group.
Okay.
And I'll be in St. George next week, and I plan to go look and see what the new stuff looks like. But that's, as Councilmember Price Hewish knows, I love to say, that's just me.
I'll do one, going through just quickly those top ones, so Family Tree is no longer available. Dantoon has a new one right now. Sentinel they thought was fun, I think you already said because of the light. I'm gonna skip down, Devrin. So Devrin's the artist that did Dad. Speaking with him, he has actually quite a few pieces on the side right now that have been returned to him from other leases that could be interesting to look at later. So if there's, just letting you know that Family Tree isn't the end. If we love his art, that's somebody we can approach later. Dauntless is just one of my, I loved that one, especially because there's been, I think, a falcon nesting at the Tabernacle right now. But that artist is from South Dakota, and he's here until April 16th with that piece. So it would be an easy install, and he would be willing to lease it as well and come back after a year. But we're time limited on that one, and that's the number 3 on the list. I just happen to like that one myself. And then the rest, I will let you review, but
Rebecca?
yes.
Could, Dauntless, it says installed on a 6-foot post.
Yes.
Is the post what the claws are hooked onto in the photo?
Yes, it is like it's made of steel, but he's patinaed it, so it's like reddish orange, and it's, the pedestal itself is 6 feet, and then the bird's on top. Does that
Okay.
make sense? So with our own pedestal, it might be a few inches to a foot off the ground still.
Yeah, okay.
I pictured that one at the post office.
Did you see maple seed on display?
I didn't, he had already de-installed that one before I saw it in person, but it's about this tall. Sorry, this tall, because they had it on a
If
pedestal.
it's in a planter, I
Only
don't,
a few
Okay.
feet.
All right.
that's a cool piece. Speaking of Dauntless.
Oh, yeah. He loves birds, so all his pieces are birds.
Just, can I ask another question? The Brimhall sculptures,
Yeah.
are they not available for lease? Are they only, there's a,
Those ones I have to talk to the artist directly, but they should be likely for a year. They are large, usually. Let me make sure the ones he included.
Feet and
would
11
that,
feet.
do you think that
funny.
all of these, like Mortis the tortoise, also
Yeah.
would be available for lease?
Yes, his definitely would be. Let me make sure.
Have you seen Mortis the Tortoise? It was on display in
It-
St. George for the
yeah.
past
Oh,
year.
but it's way cute.
I'll just say this, go out on a limb and say this, in person, it's way less cute than it is here.
I
Really
hate to
is.
say it, but I agree.
Yeah.
It didn't
Okay.
look as quality as the photo does.
When it says repurposed, they are repurposed, but they look well-used. And those elements that are suspended on it looks bad.
He spray painted them
Okay,
silver
that's
as
good
well,
to
and
know.
it does show.
Uh-huh.
Sorry to be negative.
No,
What's,
that's-
do you have any
see it,
feedback about Ascent?
Ascent. Yeah, that one I think they had installed on a larger pedestal because it is small.
You hitting your mic or me?
Ascent, right? I printed it off from Docs, so they got mixed up. That one's Midfield Ad Shop. Yeah, he had de-installed that one as well before I could see it in person, but from the video, it was on a pedestal because it's, I want to say that tall in the
Okay.
video.
I like that one. Pretty small. Less than 2 feet.
Has anyone seen Ascent? It's really hard to tell what's happening in the photo.
Yeah,
So-
that's what I was just
When I was there,
asking.
I walked almost everything that was displayed, and I didn't see that
I
one.
think it's about this big. It's like Native Americans, someone pulling someone up,
Oh,
pulling another
okay.
one up. So they're in maybe loincloths,
Oh, now you can see that.
just if that helps see what your muscle.
Got it.
What do you, council, think about This Is Living? I think that looked like a kind of an interesting, like as you're walking by, and if you see that, it's just kind of an interesting,
It's a big sculpture.
eye-catching piece.
That one was not one of my favorites.
Which one?
This Is Living, the
This
guy
Is
coming out of the
Living.
red pipe.
Not one of mine either.
I did like maple seed.
What did you guys think about Hitching a Ride?
That one's no longer available.
Oh, I
Oh.
love
Liked
that
it until it
one.
was sold.
I was,
Small.
it's so cute, though.
It is.
That's also with an artist who would love to bring more art to Bountiful. So know that that's a potential for something similar in the future.
I'm gonna piggyback. I love maple seed.
Okay.
I think we have a ton of maple trees in this city. It's just iconic and special.
But when you rake them, you don't like those seeds.
I do like them. And if they're green enough, you can stick them on your nose.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I've never known that.
Okay. So, is there anything that you're in love with that is not in the top 8?
I had a question about System Series.
Okay.
It's on page 13, if that helps you
Yes.
Thank you.
find it. It looks like maybe it moves in the wind, or, okay, does
doesn't.
it mount to a pole?
He had it on a pedestal, and this actually looks cooler in the picture because I think he had it sitting up. It's, I don't know how to describe it because it was in a video that they took down before you were able to
It's
see the
showing
link.
it to us horizontal, but it actually is vertical.
But when you look at it, you don't see like light coming through, so it wasn't, I'm trying to remember how he had it installed with this angle. You weren't seeing light come through, so I want to say it was kind of like this, because it's not flat. It's like swirling. You're seeing it as if it's flat, but it's actually there's more dimension to it. Does that make sense? So
But it's not intended to like,
it doesn't move. It's
or-
all welded
okay.
to each other. Yeah.
Rebecca, could you give us a little context on Heart, if you saw that one?
Yeah, that one I just liked for its bright color. It seemed like the artist was just playful with material and color, and that the idea of a heart has different impacts on everyone who views it. So there wasn't a personal story that was shared with it, but loved the idea that people have different emotions when they see a heart with a potential open part in it, but he didn't go into any detail himself. I liked that one because it's so affordable. I believe he's in Utah.
Did you
As far as fun color.
envision this on a pedestal or right like a sidewalk type installation?
Well, no matter what, it'd be someone on a pedestal for the way we'd install it, but I think this one could be almost freestanding, a short pedestal on a steel plate. But I think it could still work in a planter that didn't have low trees. I think it would still work. Okay. How do we feel about doing the similar kind of structure for a vote so we can see if there's
When do we
obvious
get to
top
vote?
2, 3?
You bet.
Okay. Let's vote 3. Let's see what you really love. And do you feel all good about leasing all the ones that we choose, knowing that we can decide to purchase later if there's ones that we fall in love with?
Yes.
Okay,
I
great.
want to clarify, are we voting on what we can and also what we cannot get, or just to get an idea of style?
We're
or-
only voting on those that are available.
Available, these are, other than Family Tree and Hitching a Ride that are already purchased, the rest are available. I want to know what our top favorites are in any way, because even price I can discuss with artists if it's one of those large ones, but majority of these are doable with a lease. So I'm going to go through this list, but I now have it out of order, so there we go. get that out of the picture. Okay. So your top three, are you ready?
Ready?
All right, Sentinel. All right, Dauntless. This is Living by Damien Radis. Okay, Maple Seed. Oh, great. Okay, not available. Heart.
I'm gonna vote for 4 because why in the world wouldn't we spend $180 to get another piece displayed?
That, yeah.
So just count my vote if you have to, but that's a vote for $180.
Bird Woman. Okay.
I wish.
And then do we feel strongly about any of the rest of the list to do more votes?
I had two I liked further back.
Okay.
Do you want me to tell you which two and the people
Yeah,
can see if they
let's,
like them?
because my list just got moved. With Gravity,
Page 16.
yeah, it's not a
help you?
PDF anymore. System Series,
No, it's the Bacchus and Adrian, yeah. That,
could you say it
Yeah.
again?
you say it.
Oh, the double one.
Yep.
Yes.
If
Okay.
we're doing that, I'd also do the Dixie Express, and I would vote to put it at our power offices for a throwback of what the historic use of that building was.
Oh,
That one's pricey.
Yeah, it is.
Dixie Express.
yeah, it's also large. It was brought up that the name Dixie also could be, just also we're not in St. George because Dixie's very much that area.
Call it,
That's just why it didn't make it to
Brave
the top of our
Express or
list.
something.
Yeah, rename it. It is large. It is very large. It's fun-sized for kids. Okay. So,
Would also vote for orientation, if we could get it on a lease.
oh, yes, one of the big ones.
Hamburger Express, well, that's what we'd call it.
Okay, was there anyone else for orientation? All right. Was there anyone for Desert Trumpet?
But it's just.
Those are the only ones I thought could be higher.
Yes, for me.
Okay, I think we got our top three from that, potentially even just two, we'll see. It sounded like Sentinel, Maple Seed were obvious choices, and potentially Heart and/or Dauntless. Because we can afford them, I'll just approach all the artists and see if we can do all four. Does that sound good?
Beautiful.
Great.
So
Okay,
if I could jump in before you leave.
yeah,
If anyone's going to be in St. George next week, take an hour and go down to the the red stone buildings and wander around and see what they've got displayed in their town square, because those will be available at the end of this year. So,
and they're a great example of a walking tour. They have an online guide pointing them out. Ours is much smaller, but that could be our future.
Yeah.
And I'd also say take note of any specific artists you love. If there's any artists that we really could approach that everyone loves, we could talk about that too. Okay, thank you. We'll get started on all these.
Thank you
Thanks so
so
much for your work.
much. Really helpful. Thank you. Okay. We appreciate that. Okay. We will now move to our discussion about our general plan. We'll turn the time over to our city planner, Francisco Astorga.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for the opportunity to have this work session discussion on the general plan update. We would like to continue where we left off 2 weeks ago. On March 26th, we had a work session where we addressed the neighborhood mixed residential place type. We went over the transit-ready development place type, reviewed the neighborhood center, wrapped up community commercial, and I believe we left off on what we're now calling corridor commercial. We switched the order to be consistent with them, and we followed the direction and the guidance that was provided 2 weeks ago, mainly dealing with the neighborhood mixed residential place type. And at this time, We would like to move on, wrap up corridor commercial, so then we could move on to the downtown place type. And then following the order that we committed to have at the January City Council retreat, the next element that we would review would be the water element. So, Mayor, we've incorporated the changes that we heard 2 weeks ago throughout the drafted general plan, and we would simply like to continue our discussion.
Great, thank you.
So, would you like me, whoa, where did it go? There it is. Would you like me to follow the same format that we had 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, that sounds great, thank you.
We did have a discussion about this place type. Oh, I think I deleted the photograph by mistake. I must have hit it with my elbow or something. So my there it is. Control Z. That did it. It threw me off for a second here. So the major takeaway about this place type was that we weren't pleased with the using specificity in the transportation plan for arterial roadways, and we amended it to show just roads, and we could, as we implement the general plan, indicate what those are. There was, I think, a little bit of oversight from the consultant in that going back and speaking with our staff, we highly felt that we needed to have a true commercial place type, in that Bountiful City seems to be extremely limited on our commercial areas, specifically those areas that bring sales tax into the city. And this area, which would be supported by the heavy commercial zone, if you will, I think this was simple oversight by the consultant. We do want to verify if you agreed with that staff finding, in that we wanted to keep our heaviest commercial use intact from residential uses for that purpose. We simply wanted to have an opportunity to tell developers that this area in town needs to remain commercial, and we have a significant, based on our square footage and our land area, we have a significant abundance of residential uses. And while some people, as you are well aware, think the Costco is in our city, we know that it's not, and we need to have we need to protect that sales tax base. This is how we feel about that, and we simply thought that it was more of an oversight from the consultant by having the limited residential uses integrated above or behind, which tends to be more of a mixed use. It doesn't tend to be, it is a mixed use principle here. So this is where we left off. Any thoughts on this specific district? I'm sorry,
I have a
place type.
question. So just going off what you're talking about, how the limited residential uses is crossed out, do you anticipate then, as this all gets codified in the future, that this corridor or commercial corridor would, it would prohibit residential integrated? Like, that would not be an allowed use in this area?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So since you asked, I don't mind having it there in the event that a developer felt like it made it more profitable or usable. I agree totally with your sentiment that we want to protect our commercial areas and preserve them for future tax base. But if it's above or behind, would it really take away from that commercial use? If it was to be above or behind and make that commercial use more profitable or more attractive, I think I would be in favor of leaving it there.
Yeah, I think that for the sake of flexibility, we have such limited, land, and maybe there are reasons why it could be useful just to have the option or whatever, but
Why wouldn't the developer just apply for a rezone to community commercial, which allows that mixed use?
they could. Yeah, they could.
The challenge that we've seen, practically speaking with this, on Fifth South, for example, is that it is typically more profitable to put in, for the developer to put in housing than in commercial. And they will always default to housing first. And if they have the ability to put it in behind, it reduces the footprint that is available for commercial. And the smaller the commercial footprint, the less fewer commercial options you have. And although above, I'm just spitballing here, above is maybe an option. I think if we are sincere about preserving our commercial, we should not let residential go behind and disturb a footprint.
I think that totally makes sense. What, do you think that there is any harm in allowing it overhead? Do you think that that limits us or hurts
Why-
us?
Why wouldn't, I'm just still confused why we wouldn't
Keep it in
slot
the z-
it with people into community commercial if that's what they're wanting, so that we have in our toolbox something that is purely commercial, and then we have something that has community commercial, we have our, transit-ready developments that also have an element of commercial, neighborhood center has an element of commercial, like we have, and then downtown also has a residential, commercial component, so every other opportunity has a mix of housing and commercial, and this would be the one tool where we would say, no, this is meant to be a commercial zone. I mean, I'm very sympathetic to that we should be careful about eroding sales tax opportunities.
Agree.
It's a good
But there-
discussion.
Probably been at least a dozen folks approach me about the former Pizza Pie property, wanting to put a token commercial piece up front and stack townhomes on the back of it. So, anyway, I think that holding a firm line on these commercial corridors is a big deal, personally.
That sounds great. I like the discussion. Thank you.
So I'm not giving you votes like Rebecca, but I see definitely head nods in keeping it as drafted.
Agree.
Any other further comments on this place type before moving on to downtown?
I do have a question. Could you just describe, in my mind, I have an idea of what flex office, but I'm wondering, as a term of art in the planning world, what does this specifically mean? Is it does it just mean?
Councilmember Price Eusch, do you
it could
know
have-
where the state liquor store is? Directly north, not that you frequent there, I'm not trying to indicate that. But you may. It's a free world, country.
Remain silent.
So directly north of that liquor store, there's a row of office warehouses. That's what those are.
That's the flex office.
Yeah,
Or the other good example is off
warehouse.
of Fifth West, the Stout.
exactly
So it's
right.
something where someone has an office to accommodate customers that may come in, but their supplies, maybe in an attached warehouse to their office space. Sometimes you see, like plumbers or electricians or things like that, where they're keeping their stock of supplies there, but that's the call center where someone calls and says, I'm having a plumbing issue, and they're dispatching maybe their trucks out of there, but they're loading up their supplies out of the
Oh.
flex warehouse.
By definition, does this require that there be both components? Like, if there is the warehousing component, there should also be the sales or office or headquarters component, whatever the other component is.
We would. The city took a hard stand on storage units being expressly prohibited probably 15 or longer years ago. And as Councilman Higginson indicated, that's how we would define it in some sort of service vehicle, service equipment, storage area accompanied by an office of some sort. So I don't know if it needs to be a development standard that I would foresee putting on that, but it would be more of a definition of that specific use. I think that would be a more efficient tool in regulating the flex office warehouse space. However, we can get as specific as we need to.
this is sufficient for me. I just wanted to make sure that what we were talking about, we all had the same idea.
Great point.
Thanks. Okay.
So, Mayor and Council, we're going to move on to our last place type, which is downtown. And we are a little biased in that we saved the best for last. We've all recognized that, and staff feels this way, and I believe that so do you, in what we call the heart of the city. No big change from any of the visioning exercises that the city has done, Mr. Higginson, over the last 20 years, I would say. Started with the Envision Utah study that was commissioned a while back. No big change, no big difference in how we foresee that the downtown district should be. I think that the simplicity of the current code, which is, currently a page and 2-3 sentences, helps us understand that while our downtown zone may be a little intricate in how it was drafted, I think that it can be simplified. And I believe that keeping that same theme of simple regulations, we're able to move on to finding what it is exactly that we want to achieve or accomplish for Main Street. We don't want to deviate from what everyone calls it, the gem of the city, which is the Vito's Corner, with a mixed-use component with some sort of retail restaurant. I think we started to call it throughout the document active, vibrant retail on the main level, accompanied by residential up above. Mr. Hill, in addressing the pressures that we have, did a great job indicating what most developers, what is penciling for them, which is the residential component. So we are sensitive to the fact that what's building the vibrant commercial retail would be the residential. So we don't want to deviate from that. We want to simplify it so we can invite more development. I don't believe that the consultant indicated and expressed, no, they did, with office and residential uses up above. This is an attempt to be forward-thinking in that office uses do not tend to participate in that vibrancy aspect. And we can get creative in as much as putting them up on the second story, or I've seen many regulations throughout the state and even the country where it says you can have office behind the storefront. And it does work. I've regulated them myself by indicating an X number of feet that the office can be, so at least that storefront is more of that active, vibrant, and it does work. The reason why we wanted to include it here is that we wanted to be forward-thinking, and we don't want to have an office issue 20 years from now where it's taken away from those storefronts. So that's why we have provided that office use. And this is going a step further than our current code, as our current code does allow for an office on the storefront. But this would give us a tool to implement such principle.
But these also give us guidelines to help adjust the use of the post office building.
The post office it's a tough subject. It's a tough topic based on who the
Anytime
property
you're
owner
dealing
is.
with the federal government as a
That's-
tenant, right?
It's a whole nother level.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's something that we could definitely talk about, but it's not under our control, and I'm sure that, maybe someday there could be changes made, but it would be quite a process.
And I only discuss the office is that this is a new principle that was not in the current plan, that it is taking it a step farther. I will say that. And we want to be cautious as we've seen other communities that have struggled in those offices in the storefront. We would like to have a better opportunity to talk about urban form and have a better opportunity to see how we can not mitigate, but provide specific urban form, more so of the traditional mixed-use components that we want to achieve on Main Street. And as indicated on the staff report, on the next few pages, and we've talked about this at length, we can regulate form, material, and whatnot through not having the specific restrictions for mixed uses. As you're aware, the only restrictions are for single and duplex dwellings.
Can I ask two questions?
That's it for my presentation, so go ahead.
You've used the phrase urban form in description, and it's used twice in this section. And so I'd love to kind of just understand what I would then visually see. That feels like maybe it's a term of art you use a lot in your
Probably.
area. And so I just want to make sure I understand what that means and what's intended. And then the second would be, would say a school become like a non-conforming use on Main Street with these changes, just like perhaps office space would become a non-conforming use?
I'm just writing it down so I don't forget.
It's a good question.
To answer your first question, we would say that an urban form is 3 to 4 stories. It's exactly what we see on Main Street, build up to the property line. It's maybe even providing additional heights on corner, on specific nodes that simply provide an opportunity to have more of that urban context. And I know I'm using my own professional jargon here, so let me slow down there. By having more of a square, linear, if you will, we often use material as brick in that form, with vertical ratio proportional windows on a 2-to-1 scale type of approach. With urban form would also include having lots of glass along the storefronts. I'm just trying to paint a picture here.
No, that helps.
And I hope that helps.
That does help. Height, windows.
It's about the proportions. I think council did a great job with the recent changes. Well, I guess 6 months ago, as we amended some changes to the downtown zone, as we had a very boxy ratio, and that you mitigated it by saying if it looks and feels like 2 separate buildings, why not have one big structure with shared structural members?
So would like an urban form include like more articulation?
It definitely can. I think that the current code does a good job, but it's a little bit not, it needs to be better written, better simplified, and having the more use of examples and pictures and samplings instead of being so dictated by what the code says, as an attorney / architect can come in anytime and break us down. So we wanted to be cautious, and I think that by using our own example on what already works on Main Street, we could accomplish that. And I apologize, I wasn't ready for that question, but if anything else comes up, I could add to how we would define urban form buildings.
I didn't have any specific ideas. I wanted to understand what
Yeah, that's a good
what the picture it
question.
should paint in my mind from a non-architectural planning engineering background.
And Amber, interrupt me if you come up with anything that I've missed. I could move on to the next question regarding schools now.
Yeah, thank you.
Schools is a difficult topic in what transpired, I think, a year before I got here, in that they were expressly prohibited and they became a conditional use. And then we have the one private school on Main Street. While it may affect where people can get a liquor license, it hasn't been a real issue as far as having that specific use. So unlike the office use, that would be more of a repeated use that would be not required, but requested by the applicant, we felt that we needed to place those offices up above or behind. We didn't go that step farther to say that we needed to do that with schools. We could, as you're the legislative body in charge of this document, we could incorporate that, which in that case, after implementing the zoning code, the use on Main Street would become legal nonconforming. But we did not add it to the plan as drafted. Does that answer the question?
That does answer my question, and I guess I would suggest to my colleagues that if we see Main Street as needing to be vibrant and with a key focus on retail, restaurants, and entertainment, that we should maybe revisit that. I think as a legal nonconforming, obviously it can exist as long as they want to exist, but if there were desires to expand or change or things like that, then that would allow us to revisit that, because it is a limiting factor for
Absolutely.
key elements that we've identified as the major anchors we want for this area.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like when you think about some of the uses on Main Street that are inviting to pedestrians or whatever it is, I agree. I think that we should look closely at that question, and as we're looking at changing code, which is the next step after we're adopting this master plan, then whether or not we change this document, I don't know, but I definitely agree that that we should protect Main Street with certain uses.
Given this guidance by council, treating it like an office would not go far enough, in that it would still, you still need, if it was on a second level or in the back, it still needs some sort of entrance. Therefore, treating it like we're treating an office here wouldn't solve the the radius for the liquor license. So the only solution would be to expressly prohibit it. So we can incorporate that, and I'm getting a lot of head nods on exactly just that. So we can,
Sounds
so we
like
can,
there's
so we can move
consensus.
on.
Thank you.
Yes, so
Yeah.
I see consensus here.
Yeah.
Just wanted to be clear on the approach that we would take. And I also saw head nods on no issues of how we worded the office use up above or behind. We're comfortable with that?
No issues.
I think it would be helpful to see a map and identify other constraints that we have, like our town park, and the tabernacle and the school, and see how they are impacting the built structures on our Main Street, if that exists or it could be created. I think that'd be helpful and informative.
Can I piggyback on that? I think the League of Cities and Towns would love some help on maps like this this is separate from our general plan, but just there has been an effort to collect where areas are restricted, where land is restricted from, where you would like to see those types of commercial uses, but you're restricted because of the various limitations in code. And so if there was an ability to do that, I know the League is collecting those as part of a larger effort and discussion with the legislature. Sorry, rabbit hole.
Thank you.
We have such draft, and we can tidy it up and make sure that it's what we believe it is, and we can introduce it or show it to you at the next meeting.
Great, thank you.
If that'll be helpful.
Sure.
This is it on land use, unless council has any questions regarding more comments on downtown.
Any other comments on downtown?
I would just like to comment that I really appreciate the key attributes, because I think it's exactly what you have to plan for the future that you want to see. And we've all been talking about economic development, and this is using a lever that's in our control to try and facilitate that and help that percolate there in that really important, vital, vibrant corridor of the city. So, thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, council. If you're ready, we're ready to move on to the water element.
Excellent. Let's do it.
Feel like we're being a little bit reckless here, moving so fast.
All productive.
Yeah, productive, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
This is a new element that it is required by our state code. There's only 4 elements that are required: land use, transportation, housing, and water use and preservation. So the consultant here, and I'm gonna, starts off by having a simple introduction. I don't want to kill you by reading it over and over again. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have, but I'm just going to provide an overview, if you don't mind, of the drafted element. The second component is it's an overview of state requirements as dictated by our state code. The next area, and I should look at my notes. Yeah, the existing resources is exactly what it is. It allows the reader to follow up on our sources of water and our 2 main districts for culinary water and our 3, I'll call them sub-districts, that provide secondary water. It mentions our 8 wells that we have, our surface water treatment plant in Mueller Park. It's just an overview of our existing inventory of water-related facilities and so forth. Moving on to the next one.
There's a
I have a
typo in
question.
No,
Mueller has an E.
Mueller does have an E.
Francisco, I have a couple of questions on the state requirements overview, just clarifying for myself. On the second to last bullet, where it's use of the Utah Division of Water Resources and to meet these preservation efforts, is that a will or a shall? Like, is that you can use them, you must use them, do we have to get their A-OK? What does that actually mean for the city, that we need to pass by all of our plans through them?
I believe it's not a shall, but I'm not 100% sure, so I could verify that. I could double check that.
Sorry, just one more on that. The last bullet point. It says recommendations for landscaping standards, and so are we just required to put in recommendations, or is that even a requirement to put in recommendations, or do we have to add requirements, or just these are our recommendations?
I
That's also a
recall,
little squishy.
I do recall this one. This one, it's worded very similar to how it was summarized, that we shall provide standards that promote. So the funny word is that we shall, but then we're promoting. We're not necessarily forcing people to come up with these principles. So it's kind of funny, not funny, but uses a strong word up front, but we're only promoting. We're not requiring. That's what I wanted to say. Correct. And I do recall this one because it read funny to me.
I have a general question that might be better answered from this side of the room. As far as the demands on our water system and the water that we have available to us, do you feel like do we have adequate for the foreseeable many years? Is that
That's a
too
loaded
vague?
question. As you know, as
Sure, I
long
know.
as we receive reasonable amounts of precipitation, yeah, I believe we do. That being said, we have a consumption problem.
And we provide culinary water. And so are you speaking specifically to that?
Yeah, what I mean is culinary water that is used for irrigation purposes. So I'm specifically talking about the areas of town which do not have pressurized irrigation systems. The southeast part of town, the very thirsty part of town.
Is that everything east of Bountiful Boulevard?
Not necessarily. There are areas below Bountiful Boulevard.
I am below Bountiful Boulevard and I do not have culinary, I do not have secondary water.
Those sandy soils up there, that beachfront property takes a lot of water.
You know what really struck me in the report, and I don't know where it is in the report, but is saying that if we continue on as oh, yeah, there it is, thank you. If we continue with our current consumption, to Lloyd's point, we're going to exceed the demand by 2050. And that's just around the corner.
Well, I read the same thing. What I thought was interesting is when we talk about housing options and density and bringing, that balance, how much of that is limited then by the state regulation on water recommendations and what we have. That's when residents say density, that's the one thing they all talk about is where are you going to get the water? Where's the infrastructure going to come from? But if we don't make changes now, the water consumption itself would just limit our housing options in the future.
Did you get your question answered? Or was there more to your question?
Maybe I'll ask another question or a follow-up, but I know we're very dependent on our seasonal water that we receive via snow and rain in our canyons. In a typical, not a drought, but a low year of precipitation, how stressed is our water source? And is it a worry that we may not have adequate water for either fire or just to provide water to the homes?
Maybe I'll answer this in two parts. Is there water in the ground sufficient to meet our needs? Yeah, I believe there is. Is there system capacity to deliver that water? Generally throughout the year, yes. But there are times during the year when that answer is maybe. Yes, we hope so. Because the demand is so high that we're literally running every piece of equipment 24/7 to keep reservoirs not necessarily full, but to have water in them for people to use. And that's particularly a problem in August and September when the demand is really high and it's hot. I'm going to mention one other thing. It's a question you didn't ask, but it is related to the discussion. And a year or so ago, we went to a meeting with Weber Basin, and they were talking about the allocation of water in this basin. And it was readily apparent that the paper water that's been allocated greatly exceeds what what the actual available water is. And so I'm not going to prophesy, but I'm going to predict that at some point the state's going to take a look at this again and try and reconcile what's available with needs. I don't know when that's going to happen. It may be 10 years out, it may be 25 years out, but at some point it's going to happen because the over allocation on paper is so dramatic.
Is that maybe the step of metering secondary water, a step in that direction for them to get data to really see the paper versus water allocation?
When I talk about allocated rights, mostly I'm talking about culinary water. So, yeah, the issue of metering secondary use, I think, is in addition to that.
There is a legislative requirement for secondary water providers to install meters. They have a timeline to do it.
Yeah.
We haven't been as involved as a city since we're not the secondary water provider, but the three secondary water providers are all in the process of installing those meters. That was a legislative issue 2 sessions ago.
Yeah.
Just for clarification, in those areas where our culinary is being used for irrigation purposes, which is a fairly large chunk of the city, are there separate meters for irrigation and indoor? It's just the 1 meter.
It's 1 meter, yep.
Do you know of any cities, anybody that meter that separately?
Not who only serve culinary water. They just meter the use, no matter what purpose.
Okay, so there's no way to really disaggregate, like, how much is being used for outdoor uses versus
You can
indoor
make some
uses?
inferences based on seasonal use. Say, like,
Yeah.
during the wintertime, you can get a pretty good picture of what someone's their domestic consumption is compared to what their irrigation consumption.
I would think a challenge is that culinary water goes in the house, and then you have a hose bib on the outside that taps into that culinary, and then they can hook a hose to that house.
Yeah,
How do you meter that? Maybe forbidding it, and then giving them a secondary meter, maybe, I don't know. I like what Lloyd suggests about seeing the seasonal changes. Are there any suggestions you think we should consider when looking at water use in our city and planning for the future?
I'll just say this for now. You'll notice that the end of this section has goals and strategies that we are not discussing now because we're going to do those as we do the other general plan goals and strategies. So what we will be recommending will be a function of those. And I don't mean to cut off a conversation, but your question is on point. It's just early.
Gary, to that point, what I kept thinking when I was reading the report was, especially the first part of the state requirements, is have we, and maybe we do this continuously, I don't know, but do we, or have we done just a water-specific, not inventory, but like, well, yeah, I guess, water inventory, where we look at how we're currently, or we have in the past met all of these requirements, or like?
Well, most of these requirements, many of these, so these requirements are elements that need to be included in our general plan. And they're new, some of them. And so we don't have any grading system because our current general plan doesn't include them. So this would be the sort of the beginning of that process.
Okay, so, okay, so this is great because it will provide, I mean, well, going forward from our general plan, we'll be able to start to look at implementation and how we're meeting goals and outcomes, et cetera. But but previously, we haven't really done a water inventory.
Right, and I'm not sure, but there are many, many things that we inventory relative to our water system that we are continually monitoring. Consumption, zones, infrastructure. So there is a, depending upon what you mean by an inventory, there is a large amount of data that we collect and use just to operate the system and to plan for our future needs.
Isn't there a federal inventory that's, I think, the water department has to do on what kind of pipe we have now? And
Yeah, that's one component of it. It's the lead and copper rule,
Yeah.
where we're in the process of making sure that every service, every residential service, every commercial service in the city that may be lead or copper is replaced by a certain period of time. We have an inventory, and we're working through that currently. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions before we turn it back to Francisco about water usage?
I had a question about the table that's included. Mostly that if we're going to put this table into the general plan, could we find one where we also were capturing the other two secondary water systems? I know they're not providing culinary water, but I just think if it's going to go in and live in this document for ever and ever, it would be nice for us to find a table where we're also seeing Bountiful Irrigation and Dual Creek along with South Davis, just so that we have a full picture of our water consumption.
Yep, we can certainly forward that to the consultant and make sure that that gets added. So
you.
if we move on at this time, there's the specific conservation approach section. We're on page 3 of the document, page 36 of the packet. And we already started discussing some of these. The 4 bullet points on the bottom of 36, it's exactly what we already adopted as a requirement that was somewhat negotiated by Weber Basin with the Flip the Strip program that we have been participating for I think 2 years at this time. So we do comply with those, and it was principles or requirements that they went back and forth from the district and what possibly the state was going to require at that time, and it kept going back and forth. And the only reason why I bring it up is that, as we indicated, the state could come in and put their big foot down and say, these are the new requirements. That could happen. So moving on to page 37, the consultant does provide 5 regulatory recommendations that are listed on the top of the page there. And then to be consistent and having ongoing education and informational resources about water conservation and resources available, such as rebate programs, will minimize effectiveness of these specific efforts. And we're looking at the 5 bullet points that we have in the middle of that specific page, where we want to reassess landscaping regulations. In that, it's an interesting concept as we somewhat take the residential mix neighborhood, and we may say that we're increasing density, which I think we are, but at the same time, we are sharing resources regarding landscaping for cottage courts, for duplexes, and based on the report, the assessment, at least provided by the consultant, we use most of our water for landscaping, given the season, of course. So we want to be able to keep an eye out on those regulations. If applicable, we could have water restrictions. Again, don't know what the state's going to make us do in the future. And then we have the goal regarding, or the recommendation regarding infrastructure improvements, collaboration, and then having policy updates. We can expand on these. But as Mr. Hill indicated, we're going to have related goals and strategies that coincide with some of the other goals of the comprehensive general plan. And based on our timeline, and we're looking at page 37 and 38, this is just a placeholder for them as we see how those specific goals coincide from land use, transportation, even housing, and it comes back to this water element. So we are a little bit more integrated. As a quick side note, we were invited to participate in the Utah Growing Smart Water Conference And we have 7 of the department heads attending that conference coming up next month. Councilmember Murray will join us, where they're going to teach us how we can have better integrated goals. And while our water department and Public Works do a great job in analyzing such, the traditional model for cities has been a little bit to be divided, and this is just an effort that some of the state agencies have, so we're more integrated in our decision-making, as the land use planner would understand more about where water comes from, and on the flip side, the water department would understand a little better how density is allocated, so we could plan a little better and come up with better recommendations in the future. As indicated early, this is a new component, so we are learning along the way, and it's just the timing is just perfect for Bountiful City to receive such training in these new workshops that started, I think, 18 months ago. And that was my plug on what we're doing next month regarding water. So with that said, any other questions regarding the water element? I've got the notes of the typos that we found. We've got the note also to add table showing secondary water systems. And that's what I took from the guidance and direction from water, unless I missed anything, Gary. I think I got those.
No, I think what we're looking for tonight, council, is we feel like we've met that this document meets the requirements of state code for the water element. We want to see if you feel like there's anything in here that you'd be uncomfortable with us putting out as part of the public draft. We're not asking you, of course, to adopt anything tonight. This is big picture.
Along with that big picture idea, on page 37 with recommendations, where it says assess parks and facilities for water consumption and make water-wise updates. I'm just wondering, like, where do we need to commit ourselves to some kind of a timeline there? Or, I mean, it seems a little bit fuzzy, our commitment to making those updates. I mean, I know that we have in some areas in the city, but
Yeah, it's a great question.
I know that this is, again, kind of the visioning document, but
My recommendation is.
question about that.
Yeah, my recommendation is that we don't do that in the general plan, because the general plan isn't intended to, it's intended to be guiding principles as opposed to an implementation plan, but that is something that is appropriate to do, for example, through the budgeting process. And that I think it's a good idea to have a goal and a timeline. And we're in the process, I think, as you know, of evaluating some vendors and beginning to put in some of that water-wise infrastructure in our parks. But I wouldn't do it in the general plan. I would have us do it someplace else.
Okay. Then also, I really was not sure what the first bullet point meant. The reassessing of water conservation plans, secondary water exemptions. What are we talking about there?
I'm having a hard time with it as well.
It sounds like to me
Lloyd, can you help me with that one?
revising our landscape code that we did last year. Is that what it's saying? Isn't that? If that's what it's saying, I don't know that we need to rewrite that code that we spent a lot of time on last year.
I'm just wondering what it's referring to.
Because down here we have reassessing our landscape regulations.
I guess that's what I was reading there.
I wonder if the consultant,
Do we discuss the water conservation plan?
Yeah,
Just,
do you think-
and this exemption? I just couldn't find it. I didn't know
Yeah,
what
it-
that
it's-
was
it's-
referring
it's-
to.
It's the 2021 plan from the Water Resources Plan that it's kept in a state website. I believe it's right here.
Do you
Yeah.
think the consultant included that, thinking that we maybe were a more significant secondary water provider?
No, I think I know what this is. You adopted a temporary water conservation plan during the drought that included some exemptions from our secondary watering program for cemetery, for other critical parks. I think that that's what this refers to. They had, in an earlier draft, they had assumed that our water conservation plan was a permanent plan. We know that it was temporary during the drought. So I think this is some leftover language there that they're referring back to that plan. My recommendation would be to just strike that bullet point from the draft. Sorry we missed that. It took a minute.
Good question, yeah,
I
thank
didn't
you.
get it, so.
Can I ask a quick question? The golf course, is it Culinary or Weber?
Secondary.
Secondary? Okay.
Any other questions?
Maybe a follow-up on that. Is there plans to meter the golf course? Probably. Because everything else is getting metered, right?
Yeah, I think Bountiful Irrigation will at some point put a meter on that connection.
And then when that happens, we will, I know they're assessing a sizable dollar amount each year to use that water. When that meter's implemented, we'll be able to just pay the usage that the dollar amount that we're actually using, I hope. Do we know anything about that?
Well, they have an allocation based on acreage, which would apply also to the golf course. So there's a certain amount of water allocated to that property, and I'm sure there's a commensurate charge with overuse, but it'll be a way to monitor our use, make sure that we stay within our allocated quantity.
Thanks.
I wish I would have asked Brock while I was here, but maybe you know, Gary. Do you mind, I know it's not something we're talking about specifically in this plan because we're not getting into specifics, but do you know when we're talking about reevaluating our own parks and our own facilities and using, more water-wise methods, do you know where we are in that process with looking at vendors and what the time frame may be for that project?
Lloyd probably knows more specifically than I do. We talked about it, I think, about 3 weeks ago as a group. And do you know more than that, Lloyd?
I haven't had an update since that time, but Brock's been working with some vendors he's been investigating some equipment which would integrate into our facilities a little better and allow us some better capabilities to operate remotely so that, we didn't have staff running back and forth to do it manually. But that equipment would also be upgradable. One of the big expenses that Brock's finding is that installing a new main valve at the connection so that you could shut a park completely off if you had a leak or for whatever reason is very expensive at this point. And so we'd probably phase that in over time, but get the equipment installed in several parks this year, which would allow us to better operate well with timing and with remote control at those facilities.
So some of our parks should be getting upgraded equipment this year.
Well, would they be something that would be brought in the budget subcommittee for Parks and Rec in either the capital plan or so we would see it at the end of April as a suggested expenditure?
Yes, in fact, I was going to make that suggestion that the conversations I had with Brock about this were as he was developing his budget, and I think that's the last time we talked about it. So we'll make sure that he's ready for that budget committee meeting, the Parks Budget Committee meeting, to be able to give you a better idea of timeline.
Do you know if this equipment will also allow not just remote turning on and off, but, you know, adjusting the amount of water that's used based on weather conditions, temperatures, and that kind of thing.
That's one of his considerations, and one of the, he's expressed to me a couple of times that one of the products is better about using weather data than the other, and in being able to anticipate what's coming or what has happened and adjust schedules.
We're a little dubious about that technology. Jessica, who just joined us from Woods Cross, they went down that path, she explained, and you can spend a lot of money on technology that changes the watering based on weather, but that's only one component of many, such as, and the big one is soil conditions. The water that we use, for example, at Foss Lewis Park, the soil conditions are completely different than they are down here. And so it also doesn't take into account elevation and exposure, sun versus shade, by trees, things like that. And so we're cautious about wanting to put a lot of money into technology that we would never use, that we don't want to use, that won't be effective. It's something that's being evaluated, but I think right now we're not convinced that spending a lot of money on weather sensing tech is a good value to taxpayers.
Thanks for that. Any other questions about the plan as proposed? Any other things that you would like to present, Francisco?
That's all we have for today.
Okay. Any other concerns or ideas, council? Okay, well then I guess, yes,
I might make one comment,
please.
if I could. As we look to the future and think about conserving maybe ahead of the curve as future folks move in, we need to keep in the back of our minds that selling water is what pays for the renewal of our water department, or our water system. And that system is currently being renewed and upgraded, and we need to make sure we have enough cash flow from the sale of water to continue that process as well. So just something to have in the back of your mind.
Thanks for that. Anything else from council or staff? Okay, then we will just have a little brief break before our council meeting starts at 7. Thanks.